More than anything, the Department of Defense needs stable, competent, and strategic leadership. And much as I had feared back in January, it is not what we are seeing under your leadership. In a matter of months, you have lost top aides and reportedly struggled to hire new ones. You have fired highly respected top military officials. You shared highly sensitive attack plans over Signal and apparently with people in your own personal circles, and you've not taken responsibility for those mistakes.
Proceeding is going to be echoed out. Secretary Hegseth, General Kane, Ms. McDonnell, we're glad to have you here. There's no doubt that the global threat demands from us an uncompromisingly lethal force. And your efforts over recent months to renew the department's focus on lethality and your attention to the concerns of service members at the tip of the spear are worthwhile and appreciated. Of course, sustaining this shift requires a clear strategy and adequate investments in capabilities. So we're looking forward to hearing in detail what exactly the Office of Management and Budget is requesting on behalf of the Department of Defense for this coming fiscal year, and whether this budget flows from a strategy or instead defines and limits the strategy. This hearing will be the first public demonstration of what we hope to be a productive relationship between the subcommittee and the department. In the past, the relationship has functioned best when it's based on timely and forthcoming communication. Last year, details from the department and the services about their growing requirements actually did inform the subcommittee's efforts to mark up a bill to provide the military with $18.8 billion in resources above President Biden's last request. Unfortunately, we all know that didn't become law.
All right, just had to get past all the statements. So we're going to go through some of the question and answer. There's a few different interactions that I actually want to pay attention to here. So let's check them out.
Thank you, General. Mr. Secretary, probably won't surprise you, but I'm going to start with Ukraine. And I'm going to ask you a series of questions, but I don't want you to linger on any one of them, but answer the series of questions in one answer. Number one, who's the aggressor and who's the victim in the conflict?
Russia's the aggressor.
Which side do you want to win?
As we've said time and time again, this president is committed to peace in that conflict.
I know, Mitch, I believe he wants him to say Ukraine because they are not the aggressor, they're the victim in this case, but they're not going to give you that kind of answer. He's already made it very clear that in order for Ukraine to properly get out of this war, they're going to have to concede some of their land.
As we've said time and time again, this president is committed to peace in that conflict. Ultimately, peace serves our national interests, and we think the interest of both parties, even if that outcome will not be preferable to many in this room and many in our country.
Which side is President Xi pulling for?
Well, as was stated by both of you, we obviously understand, unfortunately, under this administration and the policy, under the previous administration and the policies they pursued, it has driven Russia and China closer together. So there's no doubt that China would prefer that Vladimir Putin have a good outcome. But it would also prefer a prolonged conflict that would keep us and other countries tied down and incapable of paying attention to the malign influence of China elsewhere.
One thing I'm sure we agree on is we don't want a headline at the end of this conflict that says Russia wins and America loses. And given the fact that all of our adversaries are communicating with each other, that's extremely important if we're going to continue to play the role in the world that the vast majority of members of Congress think we should still play, particularly now that our adversaries are more significant than they have been since the Berlin Wall came down. With regard to the money we're spending, what's the return on the investment of our security assistance to Ukraine?
Senator, I would just say, given the approach of President Trump, that's not the headline, regardless. The previous administration, under the Obama administration, Crimea was invaded. and we gave them blankets. Under President Trump, during his first term, he gave the Ukrainians javelins, and the Russians did not invade.
Hold on for a second, because I've heard that term quite a bit now, that Obama gave them blankets while we gave them javelins. It is well known that Obama's administration didn't provide any lethal weaponry. However, to say that they only gave blankets is being really hyperbolic. They provided aid. All of this was after Crimea was annexed in 2014. So by March 2015, the Obama administration had provided more than $120 million in security aid for Ukraine and promised another $75 million worth of equipment, including counter-mortar radars, night vision devices, and medical supplies, according to the Defense Department. The U.S. also pledged 230 Humvee vehicles. The U.S. aid offer came after Putin in 2014 annexed Crimea and provided support for separatists in eastern cities. Ultimately, between 2014 and 2016, the Obama administration committed more than $600 million in security aid to Ukraine. But hey, information be damned. Let's continue. I mean, he was on Fox News, so all of these talking points.
He gave the Ukrainians javelins, and the Russians did not invade. Under Biden, the Russians did invade, and aid was slow-walked, incompletely, and as a result, it became a gridlock. Thankfully, the javelins that President Trump provided actually stalled the Russian advance. Now we are at a place where Vladimir Putin knows that President Trump is strong. He knows his word means something, and as a result, a negotiated peace in Ukraine makes America look strong, makes us look like we understand the state of the world and where we want to be focused, even if we understand that Russia's the aggressor and we applaud the efforts of the Ukrainians. There is a moment where you have to recognize what exists on the battlefield and that a better outcome is a negotiated peace to stop the killing and stop the slaughter. And our budget reflects that perspective.
If I may, Mr. Secretary, I'm not here to defend the previous administration. They were completely inadequate anyway, and I think you could make an argument that the precipitous withdrawal from Afghanistan was like a green light to Putin. But we are where we are, and beating up the past is not a plan for going forward to the future. What has benefited the United States, I think you would agree, 38 different states have produced weapons or parts of weapons out of the money that the Ukraine supplemental package passed last year.
Never mind the fact that Trump has been adamant about telling Putin, stop, don't do this, cut this out. If you continue, they'll be hell to pay. And Putin just kind of shrugged his shoulder and kept on bombing anyway.
Members of NATO now increased spending by virtue of all of our NATO allies, which President Trump deserves part of the credit for encouraging that. Vladimir Putin probably guaranteed it would happen. Everybody seems to be moving in the right direction. And then they look at us and wonder whether we're in the midst of brokering what appears to be allowing the Russians to define victory. I think victory is defined by the people that have to live there, the Ukrainians. And I don't think they're going to ever conclude that victory means basically adopting the Russian views on all this. So what do you make of what the Russians are up to? They don't seem to.
You do remember that when they asked Trump, what does Russia have to lose in this if they do broker peace? And Trump pretty much said that what the Russians are actually giving up in this war is they're not taking all of Ukraine, because that's what they want. They want all of Ukraine. So the fact that they're not going after all of Ukraine like what they want, that should be a win in the consideration of the Ukrainians.
What?
If you're supposed to be the world leader, that is a wild concession.
To me, to be too interested in talking. We want to talk. They seem to be increasing the war. What's your take on that?
Well, no one's adopting views, sir. I would say that the budget reflects the reality that Europe needs to step up more for the defense of its own continent. And President Trump deserves the credit for that. In his first term, in this term, we're about to go to The Hague, where we hope most European NATO countries are going to commit to a 3.5, 1.5 total of 5% defense spending, which was inconceivable before President Trump. And he has set the standard that America can't be everywhere all the time for everybody. And if you're a European country, you cannot freeload off of the United States in perpetuity. You are our allies and our friends, and we will stand with you, but you need to stand up in times of peace and in times of war. And this budget,
This I'll give him. This is one point I will actually grant him.
that is long overdue, Europe does more, and that we be strategic about the outcome there, even if it's not preferable for all parties, so that our focus can turn, as was mentioned by everybody thus far, to the Indo-Pacific and our pacing threat, while Europe ensures peace on that continent.
Gotcha. Now
And so
address the rest of what he
The budget is meant
said.
to reflect that reality. It includes hard choices. But that's been one of the things we're trying to do in this Defense Department is make some of those hard choices.
Now address the
alongside
rest
President
of what
Trump.
he said.
Yeah, the only thing I would say to conclude this before turning over to Senator Coons, Senator Murray and then Senator Graham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Hegseth, you oversee one of the largest and most important organizations on planet Earth. More than anything, the Department of Defense needs stable, competent, and strategic leadership. And much as I had feared back in January, it is not what we are seeing under your leadership. In a matter of months, you have lost top aides and reportedly struggled to hire new ones. You have fired highly respected top military officials. You shared highly sensitive attack plans over Signal and apparently with people in your own personal circles, and you've not taken responsibility for those mistakes. All the while, the security challenges we face have grown larger, not smaller. And then in the face of these challenges, you've taken a series of actions that weaken our posture. For example, in my home state of Washington, which is home to many DoD installations, critical to our Indo-Pacific strategy, you have pushed out almost 2,000 highly trained civilian employees, including at Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. Mr. Secretary, you talk about returning the department to its mission of warfighting, but I am repeatedly hearing that your policy and personnel changes at the Pentagon are only undermining, not strengthening our military's preparedness to protect our country. You are deploying the American military to police the American people.
Oh, no.
You're sending the National Guard into California without the governor's request.
Oh, no.
Sending the Marines, not after foreign threats, but after American protesters. And now President Trump is promising heavy force against peaceful protesters at his D.C. military parade. Those sorts of actions and that sort of rhetoric from a president
Wait, what? What about the military parade?
is promising heavy force against peaceful protesters at his D.C. military parade. Those sorts of actions and that sort of rhetoric from a president of the United States should stop every one of us cold. Threatening to use our own troops on our own citizens at such scale is unprecedented, it is unconstitutional, and it is downright un-American.
Before she continues, let me just double check that. Well, damn, Albie. Trump threatens protesters who rain on his military parade Saturday will be met with very big force. So not rioters, we're arresting protesters now. Gotcha. This is where things are at.
Our own troops on our own citizens at such scale is unprecedented, it is unconstitutional, and it is downright un-American. We should all be speaking out against this and demanding accountability. Now, Mr. Secretary, I have to say, for people who tout their commitment to transparency and efficiency, I've never seen an administration more bent on hiding basic facts from American people. Your department has been unresponsive to congressional inquiries and oversight requests, all the while you are working to muzzle the free press, denying journalists access to the Pentagon press corps. Now, before I turn to my questions, let me just note, it is now mid-June, and we only, just a few days ago, received some, but not all, important portions of your budget request. It should not have taken this long to get this request, and we do still need to see the justifications in order for this committee to do its work. We're missing those. Not having a full budget at this juncture is really unacceptable.
I understand what she's saying, but there's a reason why the Pentagon doesn't pass audits. It's because they got to figure out how to get through some of that.
I am deeply concerned. So let me turn to my questions, and this is important. This administration
Here we go.
has put the civilian workforce under attack from day one, encouraging resignations, firing probationary employees, instituting hiring freeze, requiring OPM to approve any new hire one by one, and now, new last week, requiring prospective employees to explain how they would, quote, help support the president's executive orders and policy priorities. We have spoken with military installations across our country. Almost all of them have been forced to fire skilled civilian employees who are badly needed. And all of them also have hundreds, and in some cases thousands, of new hires ready to bring on board, but now have to individually be reviewed by OPM, apparently to ensure that they support the president's priorities. Secretary Hegseth, I want to know, and keep your answers short, I have limited time, will you be firing more shipbuilders, yes or no?
Senator, we haven't fired shipbuilders. We've offered through a right sizing of our civilian positions, which
So
everyone in this committee would acknowledge that the Defense Department has had a bloated bureaucracy for a long time, have given a voluntary process by which some people can choose to take a DRP.
I'm just asking
so
you a
it's not a firing of shipbuilders.
so
That's a totally disingenuous characterization of what our department is doing. We are focusing on shipbuilding.
Mr. Secretary, do we need more or fewer shipbuilders?
We are investing historically in our shipbuilding defense industrial base and workforce and ships in this budget, more than anything the previous administration ever did.
So, well, you managed to fire highly skilled workers, including my home state of Washington, for no reason. So let me just say, the Navy needs welders, not people who can recite a president's executive orders. If the Navy wants to hire a qualified candidate for the role, but that candidate happened to vote for or donate to Democrats, would they be hired?
Senator, there's never been a litmus test for hiring welders.
Well,
if you can weld, you can work at the Defense Department.
That is what they are being asked. And Mr. Secretary, I just have to say, we need to drop the politics in our military. We need to hire the best people. We do not need to force them out.
You want to drop the politics in the military? Hold on, because I know I saw this.
Can't wait. I got to talk to my friends here today. This is a record crowd. You know, you never had a crowd this big. That's an honor. You think this crowd would have showed up for Biden? I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I want to thank so.
That's the military. When you're in uniform, you're supposed to be non-biased. The fact that you hear booing from some of the soldiers.
I just have to say, we need to drop the politics in our military. We need to hire the best people. We do not need to force them out. That is simply the case at this point. I'm out of time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, just wanted to go over some of those with y'all. Whatever your thoughts are, leave them in the comment section. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like, and I will see you again on the next one. Be easy, y'all.